Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here we can see some upcoming changes. The preview test server for Neverwinter just got an update, and these changes will most likely be going live next week, if not the week after. Not this week because consoles just had maintenance and they usually don't do that along with another update on a week unless it's emergency. PC will most likely get their own maintenance on Thursday, but not like any update would come with it. So let's jump into it. Brett Norton has gone and posted what has supposedly been changed on the previous test server for us to go and test out. The first thing here is for the Rogue, Toxic Blades and Smoke Bomb. They're addressing it so that Smoke Bomb will no longer allow you to get over the total of 5 Toxic Blade stacks. You see, Toxic Blade stacks 5, we use Smoke Bomb, and it allows us to get up 7, and here now we have 8 until we use like Smoke Bomb again, which then we can get even more. Now we have 9, 10, 11, and that just means our Toxic Blades, instead of dealing 100 magnitude at 5 stacks per tick, is dealing like 220 at 11 stacks, so more than double what it really should. So this fix will address that as they've gone and changed the tagging. You can see it will no longer give us over that maximum of 5. We have 5 here, we use Smoke Bomb, and we do not gain any more Toxic Blade stacks. However, that doesn't fully address the issues with Toxic Blades, and I'll get into that in its own separate video tomorrow. It puts Rogue in a spot right now where you can outperform classes by a lot if played right. But let's move on to the other updates. We have the Wizard. It's actually getting some Arcanist improvements with regards to Storm Spell. Although there's been a bug fix so that it doesn't multi-proc with Arcane Singularity, and at the moment Arcanist can trigger it when it shouldn't really on Arcane Singularity like that. But the cooldown did limit it, but that will be going away, meaning you can trigger it more reliably, more often. That is a little bit of a buff towards Arcanist, but I haven't found it to be very impactful at all. Before the change, counter DPS on Arcanist 466. After the change, about the same, 461. Storm Spell didn't really seem to have any change in its damage there. 31,000 DPS, pretty much the same here, 35,000 DPS. I even got more unlucky with the new version. But fortunately for Thaumaturge, Fury Assimilation will become a lot better as a daily power, as it will now have a target cap of 15 properly, rather than just 8. Now from my testing with Thaumaturge, unfortunately they did not fix the bug they created with critical conflagration and Wildfire Weaving, where if you go and critically hit your target and trigger Smolder on them, you'll end up just, not getting any smolder damage. Despite it showing the icon on the boss, it shows we should be getting smolder damage, but it won't actually deal damage as long as we continue to attack. So you end up losing upwards of about 10% damage on Wizard as a result of that, which is not a small amount, all things considered. But moving on, we go to Barbarian. Just an update with its feats there. They said they went and updated over penetration's feat, but I don't see the change there. It should express that it will only apply that 10% damage to your powers and not all damage sources, so not like mounts, not enchanter's hex, not belt items and things like that that are not just these powers. But again, I don't see that in the tooltip there. They've also gone and changed it so that Blood Letter, the Blood Spiller feat, will now be capped at 30% of your maximum hit points. So even if you deal an absolute ton of damage with your Blood Letter, it shouldn't get you killed. You should only do maximum 30% of your maximum hit points. And then the Indomitable Battle Strike feat, as we mentioned, is getting improved to have its minimum magnitude of 800 rather than just 700, meaning you're not actually losing damage if you were to take this feat over the normal Indomitable Battle Strike at 750 magnitude. But moving on from that, there's some decent updates to Bard Songblade. This is like the second wave of improvements for them. We have a list and we start off with some just animation adjustments and then compensations for that. So Reprise will now attack faster, but a small magnitude decrease. Staccato will attack a little bit slower, but the magnitude has been increased to compensate. Side note though, they hope that they have time to revisit and speed it back up a bit, but they wanted to fix the very jarring animation playback first. And the magnitude boost will just compensate for that as like a quick fix. The contrary encounter power will generate slightly less amount of action points, and the improvised version has been fixed to be 250 magnitude on Secande, so that's when you basically press it and release it. That first ability, which is 500 magnitude, so that's correct. And then Dancing Lights, the improvised version, will now fully benefit from elemental songs. Ballad of the Witch, the cast time on the finale has been slightly decreased, and it should no longer attempt to target friendlies and fail. The lunge encounter power, the damage has been tagged as melee, and the improvised version should no longer double hit, so that's a bit of a reduction in damage there. And then Call Elemental, the at-will variants, will now have a target of 15. They also got some additional updates, as we'll just cover, which does mean you can consistently get a lot more damage when you have lots of enemies. Moving on though, you have the Con Motto at will. So this is after you've gone Cast your Tailwind Mambo. You can see that this becomes Con Motto. Now they've changed the cast times on all of those. They're now like 0.8 seconds. You see that down here. But first of all, they've changed it to be completely free form and not magnetized to closest enemies. There's a bit of an error with that right now, which they will fix, that it doesn't really follow where you're pointing. So you can see I can cast it and it's not going where I'm looking. It's going where my character's looking, not my camera. They will fix that and make it so that it will go where your actual reticle is. But all of those at-wills, you can see their cast times have gone down. They still have the annoying thing that they lock you in place when you cast them, but having a much lower cast time makes it feel a good bit less like restrictive. But then some pretty decent buffs here. Critical tuning, gone up to 20 seconds duration. Same with Truly Inspired. What that means is that whenever you go to cast a song now, you will gain those 2 buffs, and they'll last actually 20 seconds, which aligns perfectly with your ballads. Your ballads also last 20 seconds, and you have enough performance now with the rework that you should be able to maintain having a ballad every 20 seconds. You should be easily able to cast one every 20 seconds. In fact, every 15 seconds is the base regeneration. You can get that down to 12 seconds with Musician's Flow. But that means these being now on 20 seconds, you can absolutely rely on them a lot better than we could before. They've also changed Ballad Call a Voice to now be 20 seconds as well, and it's been adjusted so that it will now target you as well. It will give you that 5% buff too, not just your party members. Additionally, Ado. This will also benefit you. The range has been increased a little bit. This means you can use that feat and gain 10% extra damage, just like that. You don't need to be tethered with anybody. There's nobody nearby who I'm giving Ado, and I'll still gain the bonus myself. If there is somebody and the closest person near me within 25 feet, they'll also gain that bonus. Will depend on their role. So that is a very good improvement there. Just flat out giving a bit of a damage buff. And then yeah, all those con effects there on that at will, adjusting them up. Now in wave 1, my testing there in single target, the average damage per second was 616,000. These improvements have increased our damage further. You're now looking at upwards of 683,000 encounter DPS. That is overall about 11% damage increase from, again, what we had before, just 616. Again, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to compete with other classes in terms of overall damage when you include artifact calls, because Bard does miss heavy hitting daily power. They only have ones that are going to provide buffs to them and a bit of support damage increases. But I can say if you look at perhaps the Rogue with its Toxic Blades bug, their nearly 600,000. Just over 600,000 if we include Assassinate having 25% more damage, because this is being cast in the front of the enemy rather than behind. However, again, this is not the finalized state. They will be coming out with further changes. We can see they'll be adjusting up the Performer feat, the Mystifying Strikes feature, Redoublement feat, and also the Lore Master feat. Now, going into the details of these, Performer will be getting a significant increase in effectiveness, because rather than the improvised versions dealing half the amount of damage of the encounter power, they will deal their full damage. Additionally, the amount of stacks required to get Grandstand for your Encore will be just 10 rather than 30. This means you can be able to get that Grandstand Encore for every artifact call, of course, if you don't die. You can see those additional updates here with their intent to double the damage of those improvised encounter powers, and they will reduce the amount of stacks down to 10. That should result, if we look at this, at an increase of about 15% overall damage. That's pretty big. And then consider you can cast Grandstand Encore pretty much for every artifact call, because you'll only need 10 stacks, meaning Ballad of the Hero will deal 200 magnitude damage per hit rather than just 100, effectively doubling it. But I think that could even do with getting triple to 300 per hit, because you can't trigger that all that much in an artifact call, and you compare the magnitude versus 2,000 to 3,000 on other class daily powers that they can use during an artifact call, and it's still a bit underwhelming. But we move on from that. They do want to change up Mystifying Strikes. They're going to just slap on an internal cooldown. That means it's only going to trigger once. So rather than it being able to trigger like 10, 20, 30, 40 times in a split second when it triggers, it will only be able to trigger once. So instead of, crazy magnitudes upwards of 16,000, it's now only going to be 400. That means a pretty big reduction in its effectiveness. However, if we do look at my damage tests, this is only with my companion triggering Mystify, and it's still pretty reasonable at about 7% of our overall damage. So it's not like this power will become useless. It will still be like the top performing class feature that you can use on Bard, but it won't have that insane highs and lows depending on your luck, how lucky you are when it triggers, and if you have allies who can attack at that moment as well. But then Redoublement, this will be getting changed. They had to rework it a bit so it will properly work. So they think they fixed it, and hopefully they have. But then Lore Master, that might become a more viable option than Performer, and they're still working on improvements, and they want to look at just, initially increasing the encounter power damage up to 100%, rather than just 50% as is right now. Basically, when you attack, you gain stacks of battle research, and when you obtain 5 stacks, you gain ready to exploit, and that basically adds 50% damage to the next encounter power or song you use. Now this will be going up to 100% as we see here, so that's good start. So that's pretty much everything for the upcoming updates. These are all available again for testing on the preview server for yourselves. Thank you for watching, and a special thank you to all of these channel members for their added support. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.